Skype Academy presents What's New in Cloud Connector Edition V2 by Carolyn Blanding. This is the point-in-time view. The session was recorded July 2017, and the features and functionality described here are current as of this date. We are constantly innovating in Office 365 with new features and functionality being added frequently. Please always refer to the latest trainings. Go to aka MS Skype Academy for more trainings on Cloud Connector. Before we start, let me tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Carolyn Blanding. I'm a Senior Supportability Program Manager in the Skype for Business Supportability Group. I'm also a member of the Extended Hybrid Voice team and have been working with the developers on Cloud Connector since the first release. Key learnings for this training session: support for media bypass in Cloud Connector version 2, why we included it, and how that benefits you. Support for 16 Cloud Connector appliances in one PSTN site, up from 4, why we've included that support, and again, how that benefits you. Additional improvements to this build of Cloud Connector, and I want to take a moment to say thank you to all of you who've provided the feedback that led to these improvements. Finally, how to upgrade to this build of Cloud Connector. For a deep dive training on media bypass, please see our training session, Media Bypass and Cloud Connector Edition V2. So the scope for today's training is about Cloud Connector version 2. We do expect that you would have prior experience in understanding how to deploy and manage Cloud Connector. If you don't, please see our training on Cloud Connector at the URL provided. You'll need to have these concepts in order to understand the training herein. What's new in Cloud Connector V2? Here's a complete listing of what's new in V2. I won't read it. It's here for your reference. I will be going through details of each of these new features in the upcoming slides. Why did we include support for media bypass in Cloud Connector? This was one of the top asks from our customers. And why did they ask? Well, by removing the mediation server in the path for media, we're able to improve voice quality and reliability by reducing latency, possibility of packet loss, and the number of points of potential failure. We can also reduce the number of Cloud Connector appliances required to support a greater number of voice streams. Media bypass requirements. What are the prerequisites for media bypass? Well, first, Cloud Connector version 2 needs to be deployed at all sites. The tenant administrator needs to have enabled media bypass in Office 365. Media bypass is not enabled by default, so tenant administrators will need to enable it if they wish to use media bypass. Media bypass settings then need to be replicated from the cloud to all Cloud Connector mediation servers. DNS needs to be configured so that clients can resolve the media bypass service URL. CCE media bypass supported clients need to be deployed in order for media bypass to function. Currently, the only supported clients are 32 or 64-bit Skype for Business as part of the Microsoft Office 365 Pro Plus, that's click to run, of a build 16.0.7870.2020 or later. Microsoft Office 365 MSI is not supported. And what we mean by not supported, it means any client that is not supported will not take advantage of media bypass. Note that all of the Office 365 update channels have supported builds. 16 Cloud Connector appliances per site. Why did we add support for 16 appliances in one PSTN site? Well, previously, with support for 4 appliances in an N+1 deployment where 1 appliance is reserved for high availability, with 500 calls per appliance, we could support up to 1,500 simultaneous calls. With 16 appliances in an N+1, we now can support up to 7,500 simultaneous calls, and that's without media bypass. This means we can support a larger number of calls in a single PSTN site. Consider that a company has a requirement to support 5,000 simultaneous calls in one data center location where CCE is deployed. Previously, the company would need to define 4 separate PSTN sites and assign users to those different PSTN sites. By being able to support 7,500 simultaneous calls, we've reduced or in some cases removed the need to assign users to different PSTN sites, even though their calls are routing to and from the same data center location where CCE is deployed. How to modify SIP headers in Cloud Connector Edition. Prior to V2, the only way that SIP headers could be modified would be if administrators manually connected to mediation servers and made the modifications to the SIP trunk settings. And those settings did not persist through upgrades, which meant that the administrators had to set CCE for manual upgrade, and then once an upgrade was completed, go back to each mediation server and reset the trunk configuration settings based on their required specifications. So based on feedback we received from customers and partners, we've added the ability to have persistent customized trunk settings. This enables administrators to modify the following trunk settings in the Cloud Connector configuration file that will persist through CCE upgrades. The first is Enable Fast Failover Timer. The default is true. And when it is true, the mediation server will expect to have a 183 progress back within 10 seconds. If it doesn't, it will disconnect the call. Based on feedback we received from customers, there are certain network conditions where the time to receive that 183 progress will be greater than 10 seconds. By setting this to false, we can accommodate slower network or gateway responses and still have calls succeed. Forward call history. The default is false. When it is set to true, we will turn on the following SIP headers: history information, which is useful in simmering and call forwarding, and referred by, which is useful in call transfer. When this is set to true, and this information is contained within the SIP header, this is useful for billing purposes, and it can also be useful for presenting caller ID when the SBC can manipulate the information and take the information in the SIP header from history info or referred by and replace it in the from field. And then finally, we have forward PAI. The default is false, but when set to true, we'll forward the PAI or the P asserted identity headers with SIP and tel URIs from the Cloud Connector mediation server to the SIP trunk. This is typically used when call history is not available. For more details about call history and forward PAI, please see the documentation referenced in this URL on this slide. Hybrid voice flag in the Mediation Server Agent is now set to a unique flag so that we can distinguish CCE calls from other calls placed by other trunks in our Skype for Business online reporting. And I have some samples in the following slide that I've demonstrated. The user agent was previously reported as Mediation Server, which was indistinguishable from other Skype for Business trunks. Now, the Mediation Server Agent is reported with CCE-Mediation Server, so it's unique for Cloud Connector. And I've provided an example here. You'll notice that there'll be a version listed after it, and that version will reflect the version that's actually currently running in the deployment. Let's take a look at our CCE user agent in our online reporting. I'm logged into Call Analytics Preview in the Skype for Business Admin Center, and I performed a user search for calls for Alex Darrow, who is an online user and has Cloud Connector as his PSTN voice solution. So we look here, we can see the information about the system here. This is the mediation server that is part of the Cloud Connector deployment in the PSTN site that Alex Darrow is assigned to. And if we look down here at the user agent, we can see the CCE Mediation Server Agent. Now let's take a look at our session details. In our report section of the Skype for Business Admin Center, I did a search in session details for Alex for calls for Alex Darrow. And if we look over here, we can see the user agent of the CCE Mediation Server again. If we scroll up to calls that were made before version 2 of Cloud Connector, we can see that the client version said simply Mediation Server and therefore was not distinguishable as a Cloud Connector Edition call. We're disabling SSL 3.0 by default. Cloud Connector Edition does not use SSL, and therefore we are disabling the SSL 3.0 protocol to remove any potential security vulnerabilities. Please see the URL below for the security advisory related to SSL 3.0 and the recommendation to disable it when not needed. .NET Framework 4.5.2 will automatically install as part of Cloud Connector Edition deployment for version 2, as this is a dependency for the Skype for Business version running in this build. The Start CC Download script, which is run automatically as part of Auto Update, will download this update for use when deploying CCE Skype for Business VMs. If the installation fails, the Cloud Connector Management Service will retry the installation. Note that the CCE host must always have internet connectivity to install and manage CCE, and in this instance, it absolutely needs the connection to the internet in order to download the 4.5.2 Net Framework to the host machine so that it's available when deploying Cloud Connector VMs. Administrators of large deployments may want to prepare the VHD with this dependency to reduce the deployment times for new deployments as well as upgrades. In order to do this, the administrators can use the convert-cc ISO to VHDX commandlet to generate a new base VHD, and when running that commandlet, use the pause before update switch. This allows the administrator to connect to the base VM and perform installation of Windows updates manually, as well as to install the .NET Framework 4.5.2 so that it's already installed on the base VHD. Once that work is done, the administrator will interact with the script, tell it the work is completed, at which point the conversion process will complete and prepare the VHD for use in deploying CCE VMs. To manage media bypass, we have new commandlets available online. The following commandlets were added for Skype for Business Online. First, new-CS network media bypass configuration, and then two settings, one to get and one to set the CS network configuration. For further details on how to use this commandlet, please refer to our training on media bypass deep dive that we've referenced on the key learning slides. We also have a new commandlet on this Cloud Connector host server, and that commandlet is used to update the configuration whenever an administrator makes a change to the Cloud Connector configuration file. That's the cloudconnector.msi located in the appliance root directory. So whenever a change is made to that file, the administrator must run import-CcConfiguration. Note, this commandlet will automatically run as part of Install-CcAppliance and Register CcAppliance to ensure changes to the configuration file are imported automatically, but it is still best practice to run the import whenever making a change. One example of this is if you decide to change the Windows Update Service configuration information in CCE. That information won't be used until you import that configuration using the commandlet. What's changed in Cloud Connector V2? Again, I have a complete listing of what's changed in V2, which I won't read to you. It's here for your reference. We will cover all these changes in the subsequent slides. Skype for Business Administrator role can now be assigned to the Office 365 tenant admin account that's used by CCE to manage your services online in your Office 365 tenant. Prior to V2, we were requiring this account to be a global administrator account, but based on the feedback that we got from our partners and customers, we made permission changes and validations to confirm that a Skype for Business Administrator role would be sufficient for managing the CCE services online. If you're using expiring passwords for your tenant account, please be sure that whenever the credentials change, either the username or password, to use the set-cc credential commandlet with -account type tenant admin parameters whenever the tenant admin credentials are changed to ensure that the management service for CCE can manage your services online. We've reduced the number of passwords required for Cloud Connector in V2 to reduce the complexity and the number of passwords that need to be managed. In V2, the following passwords will be requested when registering an appliance: CCE Service, which is used for the CCE Service account and Domain Admin and VM Admin; the CA Backup file, which is used to import the root CA when deploying appliances; External Cert, which is used to import the Edge certificate when deploying appliances and must match the password set for your PFX file for your external certificate; and Tenant Admin, used to deploy and manage CCE online. And again, it needs to match the credentials that are assigned to that account in Office 365. Note that the CCE Service and CA Backup file passwords must be the same for all appliances deployed within one site. Using the Corporate Management Switch for host CCE VM Connections is an enhancement we made to this edition of Cloud Connector. Previously, we were using the CCE Management Switch or interim switch for all connectivity between the host and the virtual machines through remote PowerShell. We received feedback from customers that this was not necessarily advantageous. The constant connections and disconnections of that management switch caused some network disruptions. And we also received a lot of service requests about concerns about this behavior. People thought that there was something actually broken. So we revisited it and we've made some enhancements to reduce the amount of connections and disconnects over the management switch and interim switches. And specifically, they'll now only be used when we're doing a new deployment, an installation or an upgrade. And otherwise, we'll use the corporate network switch. That's the SfB CCE Corpnet Switch, named by default unless you changed it, which is bound to your actual physical network card on your host machine. That switch will be used for all of the tasks, including auto recovery detection. And this reduces the number of connections and disconnects to the management switch. And it also speeds up those processes since we don't need to make those connections. Specifically, if you've ever performed any searching or CLS logging, start CS logging, search CS log, it's a lot faster now because we don't need to establish those network connections. So that's a good thing. It's important, however, to note that since we're using that Corpnet switch, the network adapter that's bound to the SfB CCE Corpnet switch must have an IP address assigned in the same subnet as the CCE corporate network defined on the CCE VMs. This can be an alternate IP address, but in order for that host to establish that network connection, it has to have an IP address in the same subnet. You didn't need to worry about that previously on the management switch because we set the IP of the management switch to match the management switch subnet. So very important, the CCE corporate subnet that's defined in your configuration file, you need to define an IP address to that network adapter on your host machine that's bound to the CCE Corpnet switch in the same subnet range, okay, as defined there. Otherwise, the connectivity will fail. We've made some significant improvements to auto detection to help with CCE auto recovery. To avoid call failures, auto recovery detection will detect the following conditions, and it will mark the appliance down until resolved. In an HA environment, we want to mark any appliance down that's not fully functional to ensure that we don't route calls to it and have them fail. So the things that we're monitoring are now VMs that are not connected to the CCE corporate or internet virtual switches. We'll reconnect them if they're not connected. VMs are in a saved or stopped status. We will try to restart those VMs. Note that if you need to perform maintenance on a host machine, you would put it in maintenance mode first. And when in maintenance mode, we would not try to start any VMs that are stopped or saved. Services that are stopped will be restarted automatically when they're detected to be stopped. Everything that's not bolded below is new. The bolded ones are ones we were previously doing. And in summary, we're monitoring all of the Skype for Business services on the Skype for Business server roles server. So that's Central Management Store, Mediation Server, and Edge. The inbound firewall, if inbound firewall rules are disabled, on Edge or Mediation Server for the specific rules listed here, we'll also re-enable those rules. Again, we're doing the HA detection over the Corpnet virtual switch instead of the management switch, thus avoiding constant connections and disconnections as the auto recovery process runs, which runs every couple of minutes. Cmdlet updates for online have been made to improve the administrative experience. First, the Set CS hybrid configuration has been modified so that the Use On-Prem dial plan can only be set from true to false. It cannot be set from false to true. For Cloud Connector Edition, it is certainly a hard requirement that we're using an online dial plan since there is no local registrar to provide the service. Get-CS Hybrid PSTN Appliance has been improved to expose more properties to provide greater details on the configuration status of the Cloud Connector deployment. Cmdlet updates on the Cloud Connector host. We modified the Renew CCE Certificate Cmdlets to use supported PowerShell verb of update. The Renew CcCA Certificate Cmdlet is now Update CcCA Certificate. Renew CC Server Certificate is now Update CC Server Certificate. We've also modified the Set-CC Credential Cmdlet to allow changing the domain admin or the VM admin passwords to something different on the Cloud Connector appliances. This will change both the cached credentials as well as the actual credentials on the Cloud Connector VMs. To change the domain admin password, for example, you would use set-cc credential-account type domain admin. You would be prompted for your old password and your new password. The script will verify the old password provided, and if correct, update the cached credential file, and then it will update the password on the VMs. The final subject we'd like to cover in this training session is upgrading to version 2. So this is for customers who already have Cloud Connector Edition deployed and are going to upgrade to our new build. Upgrading to Cloud Connector version 2. It is supported to do an in-place upgrade from version 1.4.2 to version 2. If automatic updates are enabled, then Cloud Connector will automatically update based on the bits update time window that you have configured in your tenant. For more information on Cloud Connector Auto Update, please see our blog post. If automatic updates are not enabled, you'll need to follow a manual update process following our TechNet guidance. In-place upgrades from versions earlier than 1.4.2 is not supported. There have been significant changes and we cannot support builds earlier than 1.4.2 to version 2. In this case, to upgrade, you'll need to first unregister the appliance with unregister-CcAppliance, or in very early builds use unregister-CC instance. Then uninstall the appliance with uninstall-CcAppliance. And finally, follow the instructions for deploying a new Cloud Connector appliance using our TechNet guidance at aka.ms Cloud Connector. You can confirm which version of CCE is installed in one of several ways. First, by looking at the Hyper-V console on the Cloud Connector host, you'll be able to see the version number in the name of the VMs listed. You can open a PowerShell as administrator on the Cloud Connector host and run get-cc version type all. The -version type was introduced in Cloud Connector V2. This will list all of the information about what's installed and the running backup version. Remote PowerShell, logged in as your tenant admin, can also be used by running get-cs hybrid PSTN appliance. This will show all the appliances deployed and the status of those appliances. You may also open Skype for Business Admin Center in your browser, and in the voice section, click on the On-Premises PSTN tab for a status of the appliances. When upgrading to version 2, you will need to update your Cloud Connector configuration file with the new SIP headings in the trunk configuration section of the sample file. First, generate a new sample file from version V2 by running Export-CcConfiguration sample file from Administrative PowerShell on the host computer. Then, open the sample configuration file from the root of your appliance directory. That will be the same directory where your Cloud Connector INI file is. Then copy the last 3 sections from the trunk configuration into your clipboard. Open your production INI file and paste those values. Note that depending upon your upgrade path from previous builds, you may already have a forward PAI section. If you do and the value's not false, either take care to not overwrite this section or be sure to set the forward PAI back to true after pasting in the values from the sample file. You then need to save this file and import the changes to the configuration to Cloud Connector. So run Import-CcConfiguration from PowerShell and press Enter. We will get back some information about the version that's running and also a warning that you need to redeploy your appliance after running this commandlet to import the new configuration. We don't have a mechanism in place to make changes to the environment based on changes that you've made to the configuration. Say yes. You'll get back information that the Cloud Connector INI file was validated successfully, unless you made some common errors that we detected, and that the task was completed. Now, if you made changes to those customized SIP headings for your current deployment, you don't have to redeploy. You can still do what you've done previously, which will be to connect to each Cloud Connector mediation server and run the set-cs trunk configuration commandlet to set the parameters that you require for your deployment. You won't have to do this for future appliances or updates, as going forward we will read those settings and apply them to the mediation server when it's installed. If you have advance notice of this information prior to V2 auto upgrading, or more likely, if you have auto upgrade turned off because of the need to do manual trunk configurations, you can modify your Cloud Connector INI file with the settings I've copied here for you in advance of performing the upgrade to version 2. In build 1.4.2 of Cloud Connector, we did not prompt for a CA backup password. Instead, the domain admin password was assigned to the CA backup password. This password is used to encrypt the root CA password. The same root CA is used on all appliances in a PSTN site, and therefore the password needs to be the same in order to successfully install additional appliances. Now, if it was different in the 1.4.2 build, in other words, if you had different domain admin passwords assigned to different appliances, you would have install failures. But since it's possible for somebody to have changed the domain admin password after installation, it's a good idea to confirm that the domain admin password is the same across all appliances by running get-cc credential account type, domain admin, display password, and run this commandlet on the host appliance of each appliance deployed in a PSTN site. If any of the appliances have a different domain admin password, then it would be necessary to resolve that difference. To do this, you need to delete the two credential files located in the Program Data Cloud Connector folder, and then run Register CcAppliance local to generate new credential files with consistent passwords. As with the CA backup, when upgrading from 1.4.2, we don't prompt for a CCE service password. Instead, the VM admin password, aka local admin password, that was assigned by the administrator will be used for the CCE service password. The CCE service is used to connect to the shared site directory and therefore must be the same for all appliances, otherwise there'll be installation failures. Again, had it been different, you would have had install failures, but since it's possible that someone made a change to the password post-install, it would be a good idea to confirm that the password's consistent across all appliances. I will only point out the difference in the instructions here versus the previous page is that the account type is VM admin versus domain admin. Otherwise, the instructions for confirming and resolving are identical. Finally, we've reached the end of the session. Thank you for participating, and I will just go over some wrap-up notes. Key learnings for Cloud Connector version 2. Why did we include support for media bypass and how it benefits you? Also, we covered why we included support for 16 Cloud Connector appliances in one site and when companies would want to do it that way. We also talked about the additional improvements that have been made to Cloud Connector, many thanks to the great feedback we've received from our customer and partners. Finally, we looked at how you can upgrade to version 2. Please remember, take a look at our training on Media Bypass in the Media Bypass and Cloud Connector Edition V2 training session. We've listed some valuable resources for you here. First, our Skype operations framework, where you can find some deep dive documentation and also trainings. We have all of our trainings listed here at the Skype Operations Framework Academy. Please be sure to visit that frequently for updated trainings on all of our new features. And Skype Feedback Engine, please be sure to share your feedback at skypefeedback.com. This is very valuable and we use this to help drive improvements to our features. And finally, skypepreview.com. Please be sure to look at new programs that are available for Tap, Super Tap, and Preview to be on the early release of our new features so that you can help us be sure that we develop them to meet our customers' needs. Finally, please be sure to visit our community at the URL provided here to discuss topics, ask and questions, and also provide your own information and feedback to other users. And please stay up to date with our latest training releases and documentation at the 2 blog posts below. Once again, thank you and have a great day.